Ladies and gentlemen, venerable monks, Buddha's teachings promote self-control, self-restraint, and tolerance, all characteristics which could be derived from the Noble Eightfold Path. These qualities have a significant importance in the international arena as essential ingredients for good relations and a peaceful coexistence among nations. The first lecture of our today's symposium will be held by Dr. Dedunupiti Upanandatero, Venerable Holistic Counselor at the Mindful Center, Florida, USA. Meine Damen und Herren, die Lehre Buddhas fördert die Selbstbeherrschung, Selbstbeschränkung und Toleranz, alle Eigenschaften, die aus dem edlen achtfachen Pfad abzuleiten sind. Diese Qualitäten sind auf der internationalen Bühne von größter Bedeutung, weil sie für gute Beziehungen und ein friedliches Zusammenleben zwischen Nationen hilfreich sind. Der erste Vortrag des heutigen Symposiums wird von Venerable Dr. Dedunupiti Upanandatero, ganzheitlicher Berater am Mindful Center, Florida in USA, gehalten.
Thank you, sir. Your Eminences, Reverend Sirs, Your Excellencies and Honorable Members of the Diplomatic Corps based here in Berlin, Mr. Viratna, Most Venerable Helene Dhammakusa Mahathera, Abbot of the Buddhistisce Haus, distinguished guests, and my dear friends. First of all, I thank the Most Venerable Helene Dhammakusa Mahathera and the organizing committee for asking me to come over to share some Buddhist insights into Buddhist contribution to world peace and harmony, which is going to be a short reflection. First, I had decided to share some insights impromptu. Later, I was informed to put it into a kind of paper for publication purpose. And so it has made the job easy then. So, and my pay my tribute to Dr. Paul Darker and the late Mr. Viratna for their yeoman service to Buddhism in Germany through the Buddhistisce Haus. Some 26,000+ years ago, Siddhartha Gautama the Buddha introduced a universal ethical system promoting peace, harmony, and ethical living. With millions of followers worldwide, the Buddha's teachings offer a unique perspective on resolving human suffering and fostering global well-being. Here, in this August Assembly, I briefly share with you the various aspects of Buddhist philosophy and practices that contribute to peace and harmony at individual, community, and international levels, exploring foundational doctrines, ethical precepts, meditation practices, and responses to social issues. By integrating traditional Buddhist philosophy with modern applications, we can use Buddhism's potential to address contemporary challenges and promote global peace and harmony. If I share with you some Buddhist definitions of peace and harmony, in Buddhist philosophy, peace, or santi in Pali, and harmony, samatha in Pali, are fundamental states that reflect inner tranquility and the proper order of relationships within society and nature. Peace is considered not merely the absence of conflict, but as profound personal and communal well-being achieved through the practice of mindfulness, compassion, and wisdom. Harmony in Buddhism extends beyond individual experience to include the balanced coexistence of all beings, achieved through understanding the interconnectedness of all life and practicing non-violence and respect for diversity. Buddhism views the world as a dynamic interconnection of humans, other living beings, and natural processes. This perspective is based on the doctrine of dependent origination, Paticcasamuppada in Pali Buddhist language, which posits that all phenomena arise in independence from conditions and thus are interlinked. Such understanding fosters the respect for all forms of life and emphasizes the importance of ecological balance and sustainable living. The Buddha's teachings encourage harmonious relationship with nature, advocating for compassion and mindful interaction with all elements of the environment. The teaching of dependent origination, Paticcasamuppada, is central to Buddhist thought, explaining how everything in the universe is interconnected and interdependent. This doctrine teaches that nothing exists in isolation. All phenomena arise due to specific conditions and cease when those conditions change. This independence extends to humans, animals, plants, and the environment, emphasizing the importance of maintaining balance and harmony in our interactions with the world. Buddhist environmental ethics are rooted in the understanding that harming the environment directly impacts all living beings. The Buddha emphasized the moral responsibility of humans to protect and preserve nature, advocating for sustainable practices and compassionate stewardship of earth. This ethical stance is reflected in various Buddhist texts and teachings that highlight the importance of living in harmony with nature and respecting the intrinsic value of all life forms. In contemporary society, the Buddhist perspective on the interconnectedness of all life has significant implications for addressing environmental issues and promoting sustainable development. By fostering an awareness of our impact on the environment and encouraging practices that support ecological balance, Buddhism provides a valuable framework for achieving global environmental sustainability and harmony. The 5 precepts that you observe at the beginning are the fundamental ethical guidelines in Buddhism, advocating non-harm and moral integrity. These precepts include abstaining from taking life, stealing, sexual misconduct, false speech, and intoxication. Observing these precepts help individuals live in harmony with others and the natural world, embodying the principle of live and let live. These ethical practices are fundamental for maintaining social order and personal peace, providing a framework for Buddhists to contribute positively to global harmony. The first precept, to abstain from taking life, underscores the Buddhist commitment to non-violence or absence of cruelty, ahimsa, and respect for all living beings. This principle extends beyond human to include animals and even plants, promoting compassionate and non-harmful way of living that supports peace and harmony in society. In Buddhist spiritual practice, ahimsa is part of right thought or samma sankappa. In our daily practice of the Noble Eightfold Path, ahimsa is given a prominent place, since wrong thought or miccha sankappa can lead to wrong decision making. The remaining precepts abstain from stealing, sexual misconduct, false speech, and intoxication further reinforce ethical conduct that fosters trust, respect, and harmony within communities. By adhering to these precepts, individuals cultivate moral values that contribute to a stable and peaceful society. The 5 precepts are not merely theoretical, but are intended to be applied in everyday life. Buddhists who observe these precepts develop habits of non-violence, honesty, and sobriety, which helps to reduce conflicts and promote harmonious relationships of both personal and societal levels. In the Brahma-vihara Sutta of the Anguttara Nikaya, the Buddha indicates the efficacy of the Brahmaviharas as a fourfold sublime or divine attitude through which we humans can become universal self-healers and healers to others. Loving kindness or metta in Pali, compassion, karuna in Pali, empathetic joy, mudita in Pali, and equanimity, upekha in Pali, are the four Brahmaviharas. As meditation practices, the Brahmaviharas help us cultivate positive emotional states towards all beings. These practices enhance personal peace and facilitate harmonious relationships, thereby contributing to broader social harmony. Regular engagement with Brahmavihara meditation can transform interpersonal dynamics and support peaceful coexistence within diverse communities. Loving kindness meditation involves generating feelings of goodwill and unconditional love towards oneself and others. This practice helps to dissolve negative emotions such as anger and hatred, fostering a sense of connection and empathy with all beings. Loving kindness helps us gradually reduce hatred, vaira in Pali, and motivate us even to thank our enemies, rivals, or opponents for showing us that hatred is their problem, not ours. Compassion meditation focuses on recognizing and alleviating the suffering of others. By developing a compassionate mindset, individuals become more sensitive to the needs and experiences of others, promoting acts of kindness and support to contribute to social harmony. Compassion is antidote to selfishness or mamatta in Pali. Empathic joy involves rejoicing in the happiness and success of others. This practice counters feelings of jealousy and envy, encouraging a positive and supportive attitude towards the achievements of others. Moreover, empathic joy is hard to practice. Helps us reduce jealousy, Issa in Pali, twinning with the Schadenfreude. I use a German word here, that's the best word. In order to explain this term, there's no proper term in English language. So scholars use the German word Schadenfreude, which is pleasure derived by someone from another person's misfortune. That's more than jealousy. Equanimity meditation cultivates a balanced and impartial state of mind, allowing individual to remain calm and composed in the face of life's ups and downs. This practice helps to develop resilience and emotional stability, which are essential for maintaining peace and harmony in challenging situations. Furthermore, equanimity helps us build and maintain a warm relationship with the world despite conflicts and chaos, and avoid our natural tendency to maintain a cold distance when we fall out with the world. In other words, equanimity helps us manage tribulation, upayasa in Pali. Mindfulness in Buddhism is intended to foster clear awareness and ethical sensitivity. However, in contemporary settings, it is often co-opted by corporate interest. A trend termed mindfulness, like this is one of my research areas. How corporations have hijacked the innocent Buddhist concept of mindfulness. So MAC, I think, stands for McDonald's, I think. That's the symbol of fast food chains. So this version of mindfulness is sometimes used to enhance worker productivity without addressing underlying issues such as corporate greed and exploitation. Authentic Buddhist mindfulness includes an ethical component that challenges injustice and promotes genuine well-being. Traditional mindfulness in Buddhism involves traditional mindfulness, which is sati in Pali. In Buddhism involves cultivating awareness of the present moment and developing insight into the nature of reality. This practice is grounded in ethical conduct and is aimed at reducing suffering and promoting inner peace. Corporate appropriation is noteworthy here. In the corporate world, mindfulness has been adopted as a tool for enhancing productivity and reducing stress among employees. However, this secularized version often neglects the ethical dimensions of mindfulness, focusing solely on psychological benefits. argue that mindfulness commodifies a profound spiritual practice and uses it to perpetuate corporate agendas, often ignoring broader issues of social justice and environmental sustainability. This misuse undermines the transformative potential of mindfulness and reduces it to a self-help technique that serves the interests of corporate capitalism. Integrating to address these concerns, it is essential to integrate the ethical foundations of mindfulness into contemporary applications. This involves promoting mindfulness practices that encourage compassion, social responsibility, and environmental stewardship, aligning with the broader goals of Buddhist teachings. The Vasala Sutta exemplifies the Buddha's revolutionary ideas about social equality, asserting that true nobility is based on ethical conduct and compassionate action, not on birth. This teaching has profound implications for addressing modern social inequalities, suggesting that moral value, moral virtue, and righteous behavior are the true measures of a person's worth. During the Buddha's time, the caste system was deeply entrenched in Indian society, dictating social status and opportunities based on birth. The Buddha's rejection of this system was radical, challenging the prevailing social order and advocating for a more egalitarian society. Furthermore, the Vasala Sutta emphasizes that one's actions and behavior determine one's nobility, not their birth or social status. Unethical behavior can turn individuals into social outcasts. This teaching promotes the idea that all individuals have the potential to achieve enlightenment and should be judged based on their ethical conduct rather than their caste. In the eyes of the Buddha, caste and class distinctions are detrimental to the oneness of humanity. In contemporary society, the Buddha's teachings on social equality continue to inspire movements for human rights and social justice, by advocating for the inherent dignity and worth of all individuals. Buddhism provides a powerful framework for addressing issues of discrimination and inequality. Various contemporary Buddhist movements and organizations actually promote peace and harmony. These include the Peace Pagoda movement, the Engaged Buddhism of Thich Nhat Hanh, and the Global Peace Initiatives of the Dalai Lama. These movements demonstrate Buddhism's practical application in peace-building efforts and its relevance in addressing contemporary global conflicts. Peace Pagoda movement initiated by the Japanese Buddhist organization Nippon Sannoji involved the construction of peace pagodas around the world as symbols of peace and non-violence. These structures serve as a focal points of peace activities and promote intercultural understanding and cooperation. Engaged Buddhism, which is popular in the West, which is popularized by Thich Nhat Hanh, integrates traditional Buddhist practices with social activism. That is very important. This approach emphasizes mindfulness and compassion in addressing social, political, and environmental issues, encouraging Buddhists to actively engage in effort to create a more just and peaceful world. The Dalai Lama, as a global ambassador of Buddhism, has been a vocal advocate for non-violence, human rights and interfaith dialogue. His efforts to promote peace and understanding have earned him international recognition and support, highlighting the relevance of Buddhist principles in contemporary global affairs. In conclusion, I would like to say that Buddhism offers a comprehensive framework for understanding and cultivating peace and harmony that transcends cultural and national boundaries. Through its teachings on interconnectedness, ethical living, and meditation, Buddhism provides valuable insights and tools for addressing contemporary global issues. As the world grapples with conflict, inequality, and environmental crisis, the principles and practices of Buddhism offers hopeful pathways towards a more peaceful and harmonious global society. If you now please take a deep breath and slowly close your eyes. focus on your breathing. Bring your attention to nostrils. Ignore the sounds or obstacles from your surroundings. Ignore thoughts, memories and different kind of distractions occurring in your head. Focus on your nostrils. Feel the incoming breath. Feel the outgoing breath. Simply follow the breath. And slowly open your eyes. Thank you very much for giving the opportunity. May you be well, happy and peaceful. Sabbe satta bhavantu sukhitatta.
Thank you, Venerable. Do you have any questions to the topic, the importance of Buddhism in international politics? Haben Sie irgendwelche Fragen zu dem Thema, die Bedeutung des Buddhismus in internationale Beziehungen? Ja, bitte.
Ja.
Haben wir ein Mikro? Ja.
Ja. Mich würde interessieren, in dem Konflikt jetzt gerade in den Krieg Ukraine und Russland, wo ja die Stimme des Buddhismus ist, um zu sagen, stoppt es sofort. Das ist Verschwendung von Ressourcen, es ist Kriminalität pur und verhandelt ist tausendmal wichtiger als jeder Schuss. Das sagte schon Helmut Schmidt. Da die laute Stimme des Buddhismus oder der Buddhisten fehlt mir in gewisser Weise, wie in Vietnam und auch. Das will ich einmischen.
Whenever he is asking whether any Buddhist institutions or leading Buddhist institutions have raised their voice asking Russia and Ukraine to stop the war immediately.
Organizations in place that raise their voice against the war, of course. Actually, that's the core mission of the Buddha's teachings. However, it depends on political situations and of individual countries. So, and it also depends on the political affiliation with different camps. Because when it comes to Buddhism, also honestly, as a Buddhisman, I have to say that when it comes to political affiliation, sometimes now in a particular country, probably if the political system is affiliated with a particular country that promotes war, but that doesn't represent that particular country. Of course, there are a lot of organizations in countries, for example, like in Sri Lanka, I know in Thailand, Burma also, they always promote peace. But on the global level, always, a country is a certain nation or country's anti-war or pro-war condition is judged on the government's stance. So there are numerous Buddhist organizations in place. I know, for example, 12-13 organizations, in particular in Sri Lanka, that is against war, and they have raised their voice against Russia and Ukraine war. But what is lacking is there are no grounds or platforms for those countries, those organizations to organize themselves, come on one platform and raise voice. So that most of the time those voices go unnoticed.
Haben Sie die Antwort verstanden auf Englisch oder brauchen Sie eine Übersetzung?
Einigermaßen. Mich würde interessieren, wie wir den Buddhismus so verbreiten können, dass es eine Stimme weltweit hat, trotz der gekauften Presse und Journalisten.
Ich schlage vor, dass wir das nach allen Vorträgen machen, weil das dann eher eine generelle Frage ist. Und jetzt wollte ich nur fragen zum konkreten Thema. Okay. Any more questions? Okay. What did Paul Dahlke, I think I'm too loud, okay? What did Paul Dahlke undertake to spread Dharma? The longest serving abbot of the Buddhistische Haus Berlin, Aturgiri Gnanavimalatero, wrote the following on behalf of Dr. Dahlke's 30th death anniversary. One of the most important names that deserves to remain alive among the German people is that of Dr. Paul Dahlke because of his contributions to spread Dhamma in Germany. Now, Mr. Tissaveerratna, current manager of the Buddhistische Haus, a person who has been attached to the Buddhistische Haus since his childhood. For example, he was there in 1957 to bid farewell to the first Buddhist mission in Germany, will now talk on this topic. Was hat Paul Dahlke unternommen, um Dhamma zu verbreiten? Ein früherer Abt des Buddhistischen Hauses Berlin, Aturgiri Gnanavimalatero, schrieb zum 50. Todestag von Dr. Paul Dahlke folgendes. Einer der wichtigsten Namen, der es verdient, im deutschen Volk lebendig zu bleiben, ist der von Dr. Paul Dahlke, wegen seiner Beiträge zur Verbreitung des Dhamma in Deutschland. Nun wird Herr Tissaveerratna, der derzeitige Leiter des Buddhistischen Hauses und jemand, der dem Buddhistischen Haus seit seiner Kindheit verbunden war, zu diesem Thema sprechen.
Your Excellency, my Dhamma friends, I will speak to you in English. It is 100-year birthday. This is not a person, but this Buddhistische Haus. I have been in the Buddhistische Haus 25 years. But before I came to the Buddhistische Haus, I was in irregular forest hermitage for 4 years in meditation. I am not an academic person, but meditation, which is called Bhavananuprajna, made my eye open. So I am going to talk to you about Dr. Paul Dahlke, whom I did not meet. So how can I say what made Paul Dahlke's contribution to Dhamma? Now, the very reason that Buddhistische Haus is there from 1924 up to now, this 100 years, is good evidence how much Paul Dahlke was convinced in the Dhamma. It is not only Paul Dahlke, but it is also Asoka, the king Asoka, who was a brutal king. He became a Dhamma king, and he exported the Buddha's Dhamma to wherever he could. Now coming back, after the war, 1945, Berlin being destroyed, 1951-52, my uncle Asoka Veerata visited Berlin, and they decided, he saw the temple and decided to purchase the temple, which he did so. In 1957, in Sri Lanka, with Mr. S.W.R.D. Bandaranaike and Dudley Senayake, the two prime ministers of that time, decided to send Buddhist monks to Berlin. From that time up to today, there are so many monks coming and giving Buddhism. This is what I wanted to talk to you about. Now, Dalka built the house, which is very big, as a temple, not as his residence, because the steps that is made, the building that is made has Oriental or Japanese setting. But he himself, Dalka, heard about Buddhism, got convinced on the Dhamma, and visited India. From India, he came to Sri Lanka. And in Sri Lanka, he associated that time monks, and he even learned Pali. Now let's go back to Buddha's time. Buddha's discovery, Satsi, as a young prince going and to Alara Kalama, he mastered concentration. Then he went to Uddaka Ramaputra. He mastered Nevasana, perception or no perception. And he tortured his life thinking that the mind will become free. One day, using the golden middle way, he became Buddha. Now, King Asoka and other many kings, they were convinced about Buddha. We are also convinced what a person Buddha is. But are we doing enough to liberate our mind, which is called nirvana? So we have to talk about nirvana and use the Dhamma to get there. I will give you a nice story about this happened in Sri Lanka. I met a monk who was in Mitrikada forest hermitage called Katukurundiya Jnana. Katukurundiya Jnana. So I know him long time back. He was ill. After about 7 months, he passed away. I asked him, how can I go to Nirvana? He scolded me. And I said, well, I'm coming from Germany all the way this way, especially you. There's no I to go into Nirvana. There are 3 things, anicca, dukkha, anatma. Everything is in wonder, impermanent. Dukkha means not really suffering, but difficult to carry. Birth, old age, illness, and death. Difficult to carry. It's not really suffering. So if we use the word suffering or lightning, is not the proper word. Then anicca. There's no soul. When you realize this, not understand, when you realize this, observing your body and your mind, then you have done it. So, let's get back. Buddha discovered Dhamma and he was teaching it for 45 years. After about 100 years, it was going properly. And after about 100 years, Buddhism came. Now you have 10 different sorts of Buddhism. Dhamma has no cultural binding. Everybody born through mother has a culture. But physics and chemistry, when we study in school, has no culture. So when you talk about Paul Dalka, he had a very little time actually. His inquiry into Dhamma and then building the Buddhistische Haus. This was from about 1928, he passed away. After he passed away, the inheritance went to his sister, and she also passed away. When my uncle visited 52, he purchased this. And there's another thing I have to point out. This is 100 meters away from the German border, East Germany and West Germany. The battle tanks came and stopped. It's just 100 meters. So there's a blessing in this Buddhistische Haus. But we have no Dharka, we have no Buddha, we have no... So who is there? The monks. But all these monks, they have either Theravada Buddhism, Mahayana Buddhism, Vajrayana Buddhism, different sorts of Buddhism. Dhamma has no Buddhism in it. You can, like the Bible and the Quran, Islam or Christian, Buddha's teachings are kept in, according to me, in Tripitaka, 3 forms. Vinaya Pitaka, Sutra Pitaka, and Abhidhamma Pitaka. But in the Abhidhamma Pitaka, this came later, but right now I think so. You have been to area in Gandhara, in the top of Afghanistan. They have found some scriptures. So we are trying to learn from scriptures. You have asked, how did the Buddha learn? He looked into his body and mind. And in other religions, mostly 98% of the religions have God as the center. What did the Siddhartha Gautama use? Mindfulness, which is called sati. And in sati you have 4 parts. Kaya Kayanupassati Vihati, Vedana Passati Vihati, Chitta Passati Vihati, Dhamma Passati Vihati. This is the way to know your body and your mind. You need dana, sila, and bhavana, which is meditation. You have to do the meditation with dana, sila, bhavana. So, when I try to stop something about Paul Dharka, I have only can learn from what other people do, because I don't do it, not. So, Dharka was the very reason he made this Buddhistische Haus. It's a fantastic thing. Then my uncle bought it, then he made Mitri. Then he made also German Dharma Society. One of the trustees, Anand Dharma, is here in this hall at present. And it continued. It has to also continue. So there's another thing called Förderverein. Their whole job is to collect funds and to support this thing. And this is, I'm talking about the infrastructure and its maintenance of the temple. That is not the important thing. Important thing, as somebody asked, how to stop wars. At Buddha's time, somebody came and asked Buddha, if we make a war, can we win the war? If I was Buddha, I said, no, I don't talk about wars. No. Buddha asked Ananda, does the people trust the king, and does the king do enough for the favor? He said, yes. He said, you can't win this war. Look at Vietnam. Vietnam won against America. So, when there was a war taking place, I'm telling this for you to digest how simple and how much of wisdom Buddha used. When 2 kings were trying to fight, he went in the middle of the war, invited both kings and asked, what are you fighting for? For water. What is more valuable blood or water. He stopped the war 2-3 times, but later on it went on. So fighting wars is based on greed, and the greed what we have is based on feelings, and the feelings are based on conduct. This is the Buddhist teaching. Now this teaching got corrupted. One of the things is culture. Our Buddhism. In Dhamma, you can't say this is my Dhamma, because it is an observation that you do in the Dhamma, not taking something from a book. So, my topic here is, they asked me to say about Dhalka. So about Dhalka, that the temple is there, we thank him, but he's gone. My uncle is gone. Mitrigala forest hermitage is there. But it is the forest hermitage and the Buddhistisce Haus have to give Dhamma to the people. What we are doing is giving Buddhism and festivals. The monks should be responsible for this, to give the people who come the Dhamma. And the purpose of the Dhamma is very well written in a this thing called Sabba Papasa Karna Kusala Sutta Sampata Sajita Parayodamana Eta Sasana. This Dhamma is never to harm anybody, to do good things, get your mind regulated. This is what we should do. Because Buddha is not anymore. We have the monks, but they come with books and cultural Buddhism. Everybody has a culture, but we have to free from the other conflicts takes place. Somebody asked about Ukraine. So we do meditation. Bhavana Panya means coming to know and the body by observation. So you are your own consultant. So I have to tell this to you because not many people will say this to you. You have to be comfortable at this particular moment and not to be proud you're a Buddhist or something. Be humble. If you want to know, if any monk wants to know, or any other person who does not, if you, as he said, the 5 precepts, do not kill, do not take things that belong to other people, no misconduction in sexuality, as any other, putting pressure on relationship, no, not lying, and not taking alcohol and drugs. This is enough for you to be comfortably say, I am a good person. And after that you can go to Bhavana. But if you go to meditation, I'm 24 years in the 25 years in the Buddhistic Haus, a lot of people want to come and meditate. But they are not intensively meditating, they are only meditating for 1 week, 2 weeks or 4 days. That is not enough. You have to observe your body. And once you know that you are not killing and all, don't ask for more. You must know you are a good person. Once you know you are a good person, why have headaches? This does not belong to Buddhist or a cultural thing. It is a knowing within yourself. I do not take things belong to other people. So, see, when somebody says, tell me what the Dhalka told, well, I had not met him, but many things that the Dhalka did is we are benefiting. And also my uncle Asoka Vivekananda and the German Dhamma Society. And you see, when I was as the person who is doing everything in the Dhamma, the Sri Lanka Association, which is a Berlin group of Sri Lankans, they helped the temple a lot. Like Lankaparan, there are about 600 people here. Then you have the Fordafari, which is also with 2 years. They help. So I really had a lot of help. But if you ask, are you content? Not yet. Because I want the monks, not only the Sri Lankan monks, not only the Burmese and the Thai monks, to give the Dhamma. Giving Dhamma will stop conflicts. This is my message. I thank you.
Anybody have a question on that topic? Okay. There are only few German words which have found their way. Okay, sorry, I didn't see that. Can you get the microphone, please? The mic. No, let's wait for the microphone. You don't want it, yeah? You can have the mic. But please. What?
His name.
His name.
Your name. Okay.
Okay. I think it's very important point about the role of Buddhist monk or Dhammachuta in European countries. And most of, for example, in Thai temple, I discussed with many senior monks, and they expect that the Thai monks will come is to take care of Thai community. It means like cultural, traditional things, like you mentioned. And it's very difficult to talk about Dhamma both to Thai people and to Western people. I think the problem in Thai people or Asian people is what you mentioned, that that's the demand of Asian people. They don't want to practice much, and they want to come to temple just for offering dana. That is the main point, in my opinion. It might be wrong. I'm not the one who stay in Western country, but interested in this point.
Okay.
And for the Western, there is also another difficulties, because Asian monks have no deep aspect to understand the point of view, and the language is also another barrier. So what is your suggestion to make the demand and supply fit each other, to fit and make your suggestion complete?
Okay. This is please a very short answer because we are running short of time. Just a very short answer, please.
You see, culture is not a thing that can be taken away. There is an English word called birds of the feathers flock together. But looking at the Vienna temple, Bhante Srivasan, he has not a German style. Even in the Berlin temple, not a German style. As well as Sri Lanka has come. So I think I try with Dhamma Kusala and Kusala Jnana to make it not only Sri Lankan, not only Thai, not only to give the Dhamma as an international thing, or Lokottara. In the Buddhist teaching, you have the word Lokottara, the universal, right? So I think it is the duty of the monks not to make it too much culture. Thank you.
I don't think you are that satisfied with the short answer, but maybe we have a general question and answer session at the end. Maybe we could touch the topic again if time permits us. Yeah? Okay. There are only few German words which have found their way into English. Festschrift is one of these words. Festschrift is something, to say in English, a commemorative publication. Now we are going to present the Festschrift published on behalf of this occasion, on behalf of the 100th anniversary of the Buddhistische Haus, to all invited guests and to Venerable Reverend monks. Ladies and gentlemen, today's keynote speech will be delivered by a professor who has graduated in religious studies and philosophy and completed his doctorate with a study on Buddhists and Buddhist communities in Germany. He is therefore predestined to speak on this topic. The pioneer Buddhist Paul Dahlke, Looking East and Staying West. The speech will be delivered by Professor Dr. Martin Baumann. Unser heutiger Keynote Speech wird von einem Professor gehalten, der Religionswissenschaften und Philosophie studiert hat und eine Studie zu Buddhisten und buddhistischen Gemeinden in Deutschland promoviert hat. Damit ist er prädestiniert, um über das Thema zu sprechen. Ich übersetze das Thema nicht, um das nicht zu verändern. Das Thema ist The Pioneer Buddhist Paul Dahlke, Looking East and Staying West. Professor Dr. Martin Baumann.
It's a pleasure speaking here to you, and I try to summarize some of the events which you are now having this thick festschrift in this commemoration with them, and looking at the pictures you get some impressions of the ideas and the concepts I'm going to present to you along giving a sketch of Paul Dahlke and also speaking on Asoka Viraratna. It was very interesting to listen to Tisa Viraratna about his personal experiences and of his uncle, and he had been at the spot in 57 as those monks had been sent off to Germany. So commemorating the 100th anniversary of the building of the House of Buddhism. This is a milestone. This is a milestone in the history of Buddhism in Europe and in the West. And the Buddhist House is the oldest Buddhist institution which we have heard since several times in the Western Europe. And it is and we have to thank Paul Dahlke as founder of this institution, and have to thank Asoka Viraratna as the saver of the institution. Without Asoka Viraratna in 1950s, this Buddhist house would not have been with us these days onwards. So, in my lecture entitled "The Pioneer Buddhist Paul Dahlke, Looking East and Looking West and Staying West," first I would like to summarize some of the events of Paul Dahlke as a Buddhist, as an early Buddhist in Europe, early Buddhist in Germany, and about his ideas. In the second part, I would like very much to explain what do I mean by saying looking east and staying west. The basic ideas is that Paul Dahlke was very much influenced by the ideas of the German Romantic. The German Romantic are ideals of renunciation, of nature, of loneliness. And this is a kind of grammar, of a line of life principle, and his interests about this. But he looked out for other principles, taking these from the East, and these had been Buddhist principles. So he is someone who combined and mingled and blended Western ideas of romantic ideals and Eastern vocabulary of becoming a devout Buddhist, and a Buddhist who is not only discussing about Buddhist ideas, but who is also practicing it in meditation and applying it to his daily life. The beginning of the spread of Buddhism is well known in Europe. It was in the 1900s, in the late 18th, early 19th century, translations and a first scripture about Buddhism came about. And the most popular is about Arthur Schopenhauer. Arthur Schopenhauer did not consider himself to be a Buddhist. Arthur Schopenhauer said himself, the Buddha and Arthur Schopenhauer, he as a philosopher, had similar ideas then. And so along the philosophy of Arthur Schopenhauer, many intellectuals and many pundits came into contact with Buddhism. And later on, Paul Dahlke also read about Buddhism. In this idea, in this way of becoming more treatises, more translations, and first people writing about Buddhism, and the revival of Buddhism in Sri Lanka and South Asia, in this time Paul Dahlke grew up. As we all know, born in 1865, he was one of 5 children of a state minister there. And his father was at different parts, and he was a Prussian Protestant person. Paul Dahlke studied medicine in Berlin at Berlin University, and very early on became a doctor. He became a doctor with 25 years, and he himself said becoming a doctor in such an early age was a burden for him, but also a kind of luck for him, because he got interested in homeopathic medicine, applying this in the 1900s, early 1900s, late 1900s, 1890s, and he became famous for his cure and for bringing over his way of life and for treating people for low money and making no distinction. So sometime a soldier, high-ranked soldier, came to him, and he was not taken right into the front of the row. He had to wait for a long time until all the other patients had been treated also, like himself. Dahlke did not directly encounter Buddhism. He came into contact with Buddhism via the treatise of Schopenhauer, but he did not take up talk about Buddhism. His ideals were the South Sea. The South Sea in 1898, and he traveled a one-year journey to the South Sea, to Samoa Island. On the Samoa Island, so far back in the Pacific, then he thought that is the fulfillment of his life. There in Oahu, in Tahiti, he saw the young men, the young ladies, without any doubt, without any worries, and he thought that is the way he wanted to live there. But he traveled back to Germany, practiced onwards, and 2 years later, in 1900, again he took on a long-distance journey, this time to Sri Lanka, to Ceylon. It was his intention to travel to Ceylon to study Buddhism from the sources and with distinguished teachers. So he says himself then, quote, Buddhism had slowly and invisibly grown and taken roots like a grain in the seed of the field. The word of the Buddha must have quietly, in silence, worked with me. Staying and going to Colombo and to the south of Ceylon, Dharma found very skilled educators and very skilled teachers. He studied with high-profile and very learned teachers like Hikaduva Sumangala, Tiranyamisara, Suryagoya Samangala, and the Pandit Varisvara. They taught him the Buddhist principles, the Buddhist ideals and concepts, and they taught him about Dharma was a modernist himself. He was a physician, a doctor, and trained in modern science. So he interpreted Buddhism in modern terms and in modern language to his followers. Dharma published many treatises and went regularly to Ceylon. From 1900 to 1914, he traveled 6 or 7 times to Sri Lanka, studied in the monasteries. He stayed in the winter months. When it's cold in Germany, when it's cold in Berlin, then he traveled to South Asia, stayed there for months, and studied with these distinguished monks, Pali and Pali Buddhism, and the Pali Kana. And during the summer months, he treated his patients, he earned money for his travels, and he wanted to spread the Dharma via publications. He founded a journal, 2 different journals, and he published books not easy to understand them, and it was, in a way, those people he attracted to had been more intellectual people. Dharma himself thought that he's going to speak to the normal, to the average person, but actually reading his treatises, it's not really difficult, not really uneasy to understand his understanding and his treatments of Buddhism as he taught these. In 1940, the First World War came about. Dharma was on his way to Colombo, but he needed to stop and needed to stay in Germany then. His parents had a house at an estate on the North Island Sylt, that is far in the north of Germany then, Island Sylt. In those days, it was a remote area, few people living only there, and staying on Sylt Island, this island reminded him of Colombo. The clouds of the blue sky, the waves, the white climate, and all this very much reminded him. So he came up with the idea of building a Buddhist house for lay followers on this island. So he made concrete plans with his colleagues. He had a few pupils already, then very few, because he had very high demands on his pupils. And so people came to him, but many left him as well. So he had those few people, but they made concrete plans how to build a house, how to build a concrete house for Buddhist lay followers. Dharma himself considered the way of becoming a monk not appropriate for himself, and to his mind and his understanding, not that appropriate for many Western people. There had been with Nyanatiloka, with Ananda Metea and other people, so there had been European young people living in Burma, living in Ceylon, who had been Europeans becoming monks, but on the average, Dharma thought, we need to address the lay people. We want to speak to the lay people and try to bring the Dhamma over to them. So they made concrete plans to build a Buddhist house for lay followers on the remote islands. However, there had been plans after the First World War to connect the remote island Sylt with a dam. and with a railway station then. And Darke was in a way of foreseeing the things, the trouble coming up, and the many people coming to this very nice island, and so he changed his plan. He was able to purchase a large estate in the outskirts of Berlin, in Frohnau, the suburb of Frohnau, being far away from central Berlin, the capital of Germany, but it was far away and in a kind of remote area in those days. So he bought a large estate, about 30,000 square meters then, and we had been there yesterday, we had been there today then, with this nice surrounding. It was a remote area. There he started his way of building a vihara. He called it a vihara, but a vihara for lay people. So in 1923, with architect Max Meyer, he constructed this new house for himself. There was a few followers, and he constructed this in 1924. In 1924, in August, he went to this house with his few followers. Die Röttler Biowott, Gräfin Monslau, Margaret Lau, Kurt and Elisabeth Fischer. So there had been just a handful, less than 10 people going there. So they started living there in the house. And mandatory for living in the house was to apply the 5 principles, the 5 ethical conducts, the Panchashila. So they needed to come to everyone living there needed to stay with this. Plus additional precepts needed to be taken, not taking any ornament, not listening to music and things like this. And Paul Darke, who had been a fan, who had been an admirer of Beethoven, of the classics, of music, of mathematics, step by step, he left this down. He focused more on Buddhism and did away with his predilections about mathematics, music, arts, and that like them. So in 1924, in October the 12th, he inaugurated this new monastery, this new lay place. I must say lay place then. And he said, I need to take out my light is not that good here. He said in his inauguration speech then, quote, "The aim and intention of the house is to create a local focal point, a permanent home for Buddhism in the West." And indeed, he did this. And he continued, "It is our intention to create a place and an oasis for individuals who like to meditate, and who would like to withdraw from the daily stress of a period of time in order to collect new friends among like-minded, although they do not necessarily need to be people with similar beliefs. It is not our intention to establish a monastery." So they're taking the ideas of Darke. He was not critical of monks then. He had been learning of monks then, Buddhism, and has high respect of monks then. But he said, is it really the right thing and the right place for becoming a monk and living as a monk in Europe in those days? The times have changed since then, but since he was able to establish this lay vihara. Darke reminded the people who could not fully identify with the Spartan life and meditative style of life that high and considerate demands were put towards the austerity of lifestyle. The living together was regulated by a house order, as I already said, as secure place of outer and inner cleanness. He called it outer and inner cleanness. The life in the house should continually include the carefulness and the solemnity of a Uposatha day. A separate set of rules regulated the rules of small hermitages. And in one of the neighboring grounds, one of these hermitages is still around them. The cells had been set up for meditative retreats, and some people came from Berlin to stay there. So at the first time I tried to recall a bit about the life of Paul Darke. In the second part, I would like to emphasize the point on staying west, looking east. And I titled it, the second part, Happiness of Renunciation, Greatest Enjoyment. That's a quote from Paul Darke. In the Buddhist house, Darke had created a world of discipline and carefulness for himself and his followers. It was here where Darke could make his ideas of renunciation, purification, and cultivation of his own person come true. Dharma's understanding to apply Buddhism as a teaching of reality, culminated in the process of self-educating domestication of the senses in an aesthetic and in a virtually monastic way of life. Step by step, Dharma had given up pleasures such as his predilection for art objects, mathematics, and music in order to come nearer to his ideal of pavaja, the path leading to the outside. So going out, going for refuge. Dharma wanted to get rid of all the defilements of daily life. Only by renunciation would it be possible to leave the conventional, ordinary life behind and to realize a contemplative style of life. And indeed, Dharma in his days in the 1920s, there have been other Buddhists around, also in the day, but very few meditated and very few took the teaching to heart, so applying it to the daily life and applying it to a meditative way of life. Reading Dharma's papers and descriptions of life about himself, as ideals we find values such as renunciation. Renunciation is expressed in terms of detachment from oneself. It's his word and Selbstlob, and teaching of oneself, Selbsterziehung. Dharma followed old paths on new ways and with new contents, originating from the German romantic ideas of loneliness, self-cultivation, and moral heroism. Though by religion, Dharma took Eastern path, becoming a Buddhist, culturally he remained faithful to the glorifying ideas of the German educated classes. Dharma's cultural grammar stayed unchanged Western. His religious outlook, however, took to Eastern vocabulary. Dharma himself spoke about happiness of renunciation until everything finally ends up in the peacefulness of the last imperturbable serenity. His student Dorothea Giro described almost admiring Dharma's ability of renunciation. As Giro recalls, Dharma slept on a narrow, small wooden bench without a mattress. Up to his death, Dr. Dharma had never allowed himself a more comfortable sleeping place. His way of life was so scant and modest as he was used by staying in Ceylonese monasteries. There was no kitchen in the Buddhist house. According to his own written menu plan, he only lived from rice, oats, and bread, and also included cheese, fruit, tomatoes, and occasionally some milk and chocolate. Dharma's work performance produced an impression of an almost heroic act in order to achieve the financing of the house construction as well as to continue his literary activities. As Dharma students Margaret now noted, quote, and although he had to find sources for financing for further buildings on the estate each day, he never discontinued his Buddhist work. It required a full effort on his behalf through half of the night. He got up at 4 and even at 3, however at latest by 5 in the morning to be able to work. And as we have seen yesterday in the exhibition, Dharma not only built the Buddhist house in 1924, he built a temple in 1926. Additionally, a year later, in 1927, he added a Buddhist monument on the Buddhist island Sulzer in the north, one of the first ever Buddhist monuments erected in the Western world. And as we see now, and which we see now with a very nice exhibition on the grounds of the park, he also continued working with his meditative path and other cells and the wall of silence and additionally. So he was continually working on the Buddhist house on these grounds and continually trying to explain by aesthetics, by emotional aspects, by architectural aspects, the way of spreading the Dharma. Dharma glorified a simple, lonely life in nature. He strongly submitted himself to the aim of renunciation. He was permanently concerned about the own self in a deep and inscrutable manner. In accordance with Schopenhauer, he gave reference to the genius and anything like heroic. In short, Dharma combined the romantic heroism of carrying out the purifying self-cultivation with the understanding of Buddhism as a teaching of reality. He declared, quote, Buddhism is similar to a bitter-tasting medicament, which is prescribed to a sick person by a doctor, and he himself was a doctor himself. There is no real knowledge in Buddhism without a concrete way of living. There is also no knowledge without the sacrifice of renunciation. A Buddhism which doesn't prepare the way of sacrificing the self-centeredness is no Buddhism. So what he understood is applying Buddhism to life is renunciation, but not necessarily becoming a monk, but as a lay person, but getting rid of all pleasures of life. Dark interpreted Buddhism as a clear but solid teaching of living, whose greatness is not based on its idealism, but on its content of reality. It is a centrality for Dharma to define the idea of reality and its meaning. According to Dharma, Buddha is the harbinger of reality, the reality harbinger. In his long treatise, The Buddhism, Dharma analyzed the notion and existence of reality in a complex and elaborated manner. In a distinct manner, he turns against the interpretation of reality and explanation that is on the one hand delivered by faith, on the other hand by science. According to Dharma, the genius thinker has to have an accurate view of the fact that with Buddhism, he enters into a world which has neither to believe nor can be proved, but which, however, experiences itself as nourishment and has to experience it as such. Dharma is eager to emphasize his practical aspect of the transfer of the teaching to a style of simple living. It is, as he said, the actualization, the realization of the content of reality and the process of nourishment which defines Buddhism. So his main point is that Buddhism is to be understood as reality, and understanding of this reality can't be proved and can't be believed, but Buddhism is a middle way to go through Dharma. What are you hearing down there? Okay. Let me finally turn to the last days of Buddha and the further developments of the Buddhist house. We heard a bit about this already. He added to the main building, he added a temple in Japanese style in 1926. On full moon days, Upasutta ceremonies were carried out. More than 100 people attended this, and the temple was overcrowded. There had many people around them in the 1930s. I spoke to an elderly Buddhist in the 1990s who had been at the House of Dharma in 1933, 1934, and he told about these celebrations and how many people attended this. There had been famous people coming there to Dharma, called Hermann Kaiserin visited him, and as we all know, Dharma also stayed for 10 days in 1925 in the Buddhist house. On Sundays, the park of the Buddhist house was visited by numerous visitors and spectators from Berlin. In a certain sense, the Berlin well-educated bourgeois considered the Buddhist house in Dharma as a curiosity and wondered about its fascination of life. In autumn 27, Dharma became very sick. As a student, Margaret Lau recalled, his body literally decayed under the burden of work and his life. He became gradually weaker and more delicate. Dharma died on the full moon day in February of the following day, on the 29th February 1928, with a smiling face and clear consciousness. The death was only made known to the public 6 weeks later, and Dharma's body was buried on the territory of the park, at that time unknown to his followers. No death certificate was issued. Dharma, who was admired by his followers as a preacher of the teaching of the Supreme, and whose interpretation was quote identical with the redemption act of humanity, wanted to cut down any cult around him. Initially, Dharma's sister Bertha Dharma continued the work and preserved the house during the 1930s. Bertha Dharma had become Dharma's first student in 1940 and admired his brother highly. The sisters gradually sold the large estate on the island because the financing were very limited, and the sisters refused, however, to sell the house to Japanese Buddhists in the 1930s who wanted to buy the ground and turn this into the Buddhistische temple. But siblings, the Dharma sisters, very clearly said, we want to keep the connection to Ceylon and to Theravada Buddhism. However, the devastating war were no good for the house. In 1942, every Buddhist activities were forbidden. After the war, 1945 following, there had been refugees in the house, and nobody really cared for the house. So it was, there was a threatened of by dilapidation, and we would not be in a position of the Buddhist house if not a happy hand somehow turned up there. And this happy hand somehow is, or conspicuously, is connected with the Sinhalese jewelry Asoka Veranatha. He traveled in Germany on a business travel in 1951 and came about the low moral and the looking for new morals by many Germans, and he thought that spreading the Dharma would be the best tool to help the German people. And he traveled again to Germany in 1953 and spoke the idea of sending dispatching monks to Germany and spoke with a few existing Buddhist institutions. In 1952, he founded the Lanka Dharma Society in Ceylon and had very much support from Sri Lanka in sending over monks to Germany. And finally, in 1957, and Tisagora told us already, he was able to buy the Buddhist house, this estate, from a hire of Dharma, signing the treaty on the island of Sylt, and then renovating the house in 1957. In June 1957, the first 3 monks were sent off from Sri Lanka and landed in Germany in July the same year. From then onwards, monks have been living in the house and tried to spread the Dharma. Some have been more successful because spreading the Dharma would need to do this in the German language, and some succeeded well, others not that well. But it was Asoka Veranatha who had been, in a way, the savior of the house. Buddhism's rapid growth in Germany and elsewhere since the 1970s, however, considerably changed the status and impact of the Buddhist house and the German Dharma-Buddha Society. A recognized and well-acknowledged focal point of Buddhism in Western Germany and Western Europe until the mid-1900s, the explosive development with the rush of newly settling Zen and Tibetan teachers and traditions to some extent have marginalized the house. The house became one among many, and many did not were aware of this treasure which had been around in Berlin. In 2000, however, the society was revived with the election of new office bearers. Detailed articles appeared in the national papers of Sri Lanka, praising the society's works and the assumed considerable impact of monks in Berlin. A public seminar with keynote speaker Bhikkhu Bodhi commemorated the first anniversary of the death of the society's founder, Asoka Veranatha, in July 2000, followed by the publication of new booklets. In 2002, so the 50th year anniversary of the foundation was publicly celebrated, and a nicely made anniversary souvenir was published. Activities also flourished in Berlin, staging well-attended Vesak celebrations, public lectures, and much more. And finally, yesterday and today, we are celebrating the 100th anniversary of the Buddhist House Berlin, and we have to thank again Paul Dahlke for initiating this house, for founding this house, and Asoka Veranatha for saving this house. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Professor Baumann, for the interesting speech. And also thank you for appreciating the exhibition and the exhibition tour which took place yesterday at the Buddhistisce Haus. Are there any questions to Professor Baumann pertaining to the topic? If not, I will just take the opportunity of asking one question. Do you think that the pessimistic philosopher, as the Germans called Schopenhauer at that time, was influenced by Buddha's teachings, or were his ideas his own ones?
The question is whether people in Frohnau have been interested in Buddhism.
No. Whether Schopenhauer was influenced by Buddha or
read in the 1830s, 1820s, a lot of Buddhist treatises. But Schopenhauer was very much convinced of his own philosophy. And he was not a Buddhist then. He thought that Buddha and he himself had the same ideas, but in his writings, der Wille, so the will and the perception of reality and of the world, and Schopenhauer did not take up these Buddhist ideas, but he thought that the philosophy, his own philosophy of Schopenhauer's philosophy, is in a way, well, Buddha says that his philosophy is right, that his philosophy of that the will is only a perception of mind, and that this is the same then. But he was not in a way influenced by Buddha, by his philosophy, I would say.
Okay, thank you, Professor. And now we want to give your ears a rest and offer something for your eyes. Dance from Thailand. Buddha Bhuka dance is a performance of worship of the triple gems. The gesture and the movements are imitated from images of dancer statues displayed in the Museum of Thailand. It's a creative performance that generates beauty and gracefulness and hence used to promote Thai culture. Yes, please.
No sound. No sound. Sound is not.